This episode is about escape clauses and how a seller can use one to their advantage to entertain other offers even after their property is sold conditionally. So in episode 195, I talked about the importance of backup offers and how a seller should be encouraging new showings and hopefully new offers even after they've entered into a conditional agreement with a buyer. Remember, a conditional agreement means that the seller and the buyer have agreed upon terms like price and closing date, etc., but the buyer probably has some due diligence to do or conduct before fully committing to the purchase. Now, the problem with receiving backup offers is that the seller can't do anything with them. They can't be accepted because that seller is already in an agreement. Basically, the seller has to hope that the buyer submitting the backup offer is okay with waiting around until the conditional period of the original offer is up to see if that first buyer is going to firm up or not. That is, unless the seller includes what's called an escape clause as part of their conditional agreement with that first buyer. Here's how it works. For example, let's say a seller enters into a conditional agreement with a buyer and that buyer needs 10 business days to, let's say, get their financing sorted out. 10 business days is a long time, and the seller isn't super confident that the buyer will qualify for whatever loan that they need. So the seller makes sure that an escape clause is included in the agreement. 3 days later, a different buyer submits an offer on the property, and the terms and conditions of that offer are favorable to the seller compared to the offer that they've already accepted. The escape clause in the accepted offer can be triggered, and that allows the seller to contact the buyer and say something like, "You have 24 hours to firm up, and if you don't, I'm going with this other offer." Now, unlike what I talked about in episode 195, the seller doesn't have to wait around for the buyer to complete their due diligence and instead can force their hand. Another scenario where an escape clause can be invaluable is when the buyer wants to purchase the seller's property conditional upon that buyer selling their own property. That length of condition could be quite extensive and it could be risky for the seller. So having an out from that agreement in case another offer comes along could be essential for the seller. Escape clauses are not always feasible or acceptable to a buyer, but if a buyer's condition is quite lengthy, let's say more than 10 business days, or if it's a risky one for a seller to accept, then having an escape clause in place allows for a solid plan B for the seller, just in case. I'm Jamie Harnish, Toronto Real Estate Navigator with Bosley Real Estate. I want to thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you again. Take care.